Yesterday, I introduced you to Justin Trudeau's star candidate, who's an economics expert. Well, that's what all the newspapers say, at least. There it is in the Canadian press, star candidate with strong economic credentials. And the Globe and Mail said pretty much the same exact thing. They used that official phrase again, star candidate, said she was an economics expert, and added, let me get the wording just right, that she is, quote, considered a catch. The Globe doesn't say who thinks she's a catch. They just wrote it. Of course, Freeland used to be a Globe and Mail columnist, so I guess they're just giving their own editorial opinion. It's all pretty cozy, isn't it? Where the media party and the Liberal Party overlap. I mean, normally it's not so obvious, not so official, but here it is. Don't take it from me, take it from Freeland herself. Listen to her being interviewed by our David Akin on her nomination day.
Let me ask you then about the decision you came to leave our job as a journalist, to leave us, leave our tribe.
I haven't left you,
yes,
David.
well,
we're here
right,
together.
right.
Here I am with so many wonderful journalists.
So many wonderful journalists. I haven't left you, my tribe, and you saw Susan Delacourt there too. Well, now, normally Liberal candidates don't say things like that out loud. They don't say that they're still colleagues with journalists. That's supposed to be a nod and a wink kind of thing. But sometimes it's just hard to hide love, you know? I mean, here's Trudeau with some of his personal friends. That's Althea Radge of the Huffington Post and Paul Wells of Maclean's, their buddies. And then they report on him as if they're neutral. I mean, in the world of business, say stock markets, if you have a personal stake in a company but promote those stocks publicly without disclosing it, that's a firing offense and perhaps even insider trading. But if you're bestest friends with Trudeau, of course you call him Justin, and then report about him without disclosing that friendship, well, that's just called normal media business. I mean, dear viewer, have you seen in a single one of these breathless news reports about this star candidate and how she's bolstering Trudeau's economic credentials, have you seen in a single news report, other than this show, that Chrystia Freeland does not actually have an economics degree or any economics background at all? That there is no evidence she's taken a single course in economics, read a single book, that her studies were actually about Russian language and history? That's the closest, the closest that she's gotten to economics is writing this gossipy book on the lifestyles of the rich and famous, sort of like Robin Leach used to do on his TV tabloid show. Of course you haven't seen that reported elsewhere, because Freeland is in both the media party and the Liberal Party, as she said. She's going to fight the evil Stephen Harper, and that suits most of her media party colleagues just fine. They're actually helping her with her PR. They'll cover for her, just like they're covering for Trudeau's hollowness, too. Well, let's talk about substance for a minute. Here is a scripted, produced, short TV ad that she did for her campaign on the internet. So this was a tightly controlled and produced statement. Listen to it.
The particular strength, the particular thing that I can bring to Canada and to the Liberal Party right now is a sophisticated understanding of the global economy and an ability to communicate that.
Okay, so that's the promise, being sophisticated. But what's she been like in her first few days on the job as a candidate? Well, I note that in most TV coverage of Freeland and her nomination as Liberal candidate Toronto Centre, that her friends in the media party don't put her on TV talking with the sound up. It's just background footage, what we in the business call B-roll, that is video of her while reporters talk instead. Now, why is that? Well, as I showed you yesterday, it's because when Freeland actually talks without a script like in that little ad there about the subject she's pretending to be an expert in, she comes across as an airhead. Listen for yourself.
I really believe that we're at a tipping point. I think we're at a tipping point in the world economy. I think this is a moment when things are changing really, really profoundly. And only the countries and the companies and the people who figure that out, who grasp this is a consequential moment, are going to make it. I think Canada's at a tipping point because I really believe, and again, my time campaigning has reinforced this, that Canadians are ready for a change. They've had some time with the Harper government and they're not too happy with where they've gotten. And then finally, I think we're at a tipping point because the Liberals have found in Justin Trudeau a leader.
Yeah, it just goes on. Cliches, buzzwords. Only Justin Trudeau would call that blather deep thinking. She calls it sophisticated. Yeah, sophisticated. It's worse than that. Whenever she's actually pressed for details, she admits she has no clue. Can she get back to you later? Here's an interview she gave with the Washington Post when she announced she was moving back to Canada to teach us how sophisticated people like her think. She was asked for policy specifics. And here's what she said. It's a bit long, but it's a very honest look into her mind, so it's important. Please let me read it at length. She was asked for specific policies by the Washington Post, and here's what she said. She said, sadly for me and for you, I'm not an economic genius. I'm not Keynes or Teddy Roosevelt or FDR. I don't have fully formed in my mind the answer. I also think, and this is a really core conviction of mine, that there are some issues in politics where there is, at least for me, an easy yes-no answer, but how we find ways to share the fruits of globalization and the technological revolution more widely is really hard. I think it's a 25-year project for a lot of people thinking and writing and proposing, and it'll require a lot of trial and error by politicians. And I can see people's eyes roll every time I say that, but it's true. It'll take a lot of time. Really? So she's not an expert that the Globe and Mail and the CP said she was? I thought Trudeau said she was an expert with answers, and she has no yes-no ideas. She thinks economics is really hard. She thinks she needs 25 years to come up with some ideas. I mean, I appreciate modesty and humility, but I don't think this is that. This is someone saying in a very serious interview with America's most serious political newspaper that she does not have a plan, let alone even a basic vision. Oh, but she does have one gimmick that she liked, very Trudeau-like. Let me read it to you. She told the Washington Post, if you want to be a successful society or city, you need to do everything possible to be the most attractive place for entrepreneurship. You need to be a buzzy, creative, sexy city where people want to be. But we here in Canada and Toronto need to really work harder to make this a magnet. Okay, she'll make Canada buzzy and sexy, and that'll make us a magnet. Could you jam in more jargon and cliches and more fads, please? Oh, yeah, actually, she can.
We're at a tipping point. I think we're at a tipping point. I think Canada's at a tipping point. Finally, I think we're at a tipping point.
This is the sophistication she's bringing back with her from New York. In her own defense, I don't think she has actually called herself a star candidate. She called herself sophisticated, but I don't think she's called herself an economics expert, at least not that I found yet. Now, the media party has called her that, even after this staggering moment this week. Look at this.
The economy is growing and the middle class is not reaping the benefits. Think about that. That's just terrible, right? We used to be in a situation where get the economy growing and everybody prospered. That mechanism has broken down. So how do we fix it? That's what Scott and I, with Justin, with our Liberal colleagues, have been charged to do. And it's a really complicated problem. We're going to work really hard on it, and we're going to come up with some great ideas.
Hey, can you vote for me? And I promise you I'll get back to you later with an answer, and maybe I'll work really hard on it. Look, but it's not even about policy that she has no idea. It's about even more basic ideas than that. Like when our David Akin asked Freeland the simplest question in all of politics. Why should people vote for you instead of your opponent? I mean, if you don't know the answer to that, why are you a candidate? Here, watch that question and the answer.
Why not Tom Mulcair and the NDP instead of Justin Trudeau and the Liberals?
I, again, am not going to go for that question, David.
I tried really hard.
I'm totally not going to go for that question, David. Why not? That's sort of the question that we ask on the ballot. Why aren't you going to get into that? You don't have an answer to that? You haven't thought that through. Okay, maybe you haven't been told the official Liberal talking points, but you can't even give a personal answer? Why you really gave up a job in New York to come back to Canada? You don't know why? And you think the question is impertinent? You think the question's a trick, maybe? Now, I thought that David Akin was being very gentle here. He wasn't grilling her or asking tough follow-up questions like, what the hell are you talking about with all those tipping points? Do you even know what that means? He was just asking friendly, open-ended questions like, why should people vote for you? I'm sorry, that is not a sophisticated world-class economics expert and star candidate answer. That's a snippy reporter with no expertise, as vacuous as Trudeau himself, who's counting on the media party's peer pressure and tribal nature to cover up how hollow she is. There's nothing wrong with journalists entering politics. They can be good politicians. They're skeptical. They can ask good questions. Journalists are generally interested in public things. They're good talkers. But journalists also have flaws of their trade. They're generally jack of all trades who are true experts in nothing, and they are prone to fads and fashions and buzzwords like tipping point. Chrystia Freeland is not a star candidate. I'm sure she'll win her by-election because it's in one of the safest Liberal seats in the country, Toronto Centre, but I am equally sure that she will not help out boy Trudeau learn anything about economics, precisely because she has nothing to teach. Oh, other than how to say tipping point in a very, very sophisticated way.